Okay, let's take a look at our quiz problem here. So we're asked to graph the quadratic inequality. And here's our problem. And there's going to be a lot of different things involved here. So as I go through the solution and you're confused, you definitely want to take note of what what's troubling you, and then go back and review. So let's take a look at our solution. All right, so like I said, multiple different skill sets going on. So the first thing is, here's our problem, okay? It's a quadratic inequality, but if you want to, for a second, you can kind of think of it as a quadratic equation, or a quadratic function rather. So we have y equals x squared minus x minus 12. So if I gave you this quadratic function and I said, okay, I'd like you to do two things for me. Okay, I want you to first graph it, and then second of all, I'd like you to solve this quadratic equation. You should be able to do that in order to be able to do this problem. So if you can't graph a quadratic equation or solve them skillfully, they're going to have a tough time. So let's assume that you can. All right, so over here what I'm doing is I'm finding the y-intercept of this quadratic equation, okay, and that's the point where the parabola, remember the graph of these quadratic equations is a parabola, it's the point where it's going to cross the y-axis. So to find that, all I'm going to do is determine, I'm going to let x equal to 0. I'm going to plug in 0, okay, in for my x, and I'm going to figure out what y is going to be when x is equal to 0. Okay, so here is the point. When x was 0, y turned out to be negative 12, and this is what we call the y-intercept. So it's way down here. And then based upon this quadratic equation, okay, this quadratic inequality, it's positive, so I know it's going to be an upward parabola. So this is the basic graph of that parabola. Now let's talk about the borders here. Okay, you can see here that I have dashed lines. I don't have a solid line, and the reason why that is because when you're looking at a inequality right here, okay, this is a less than, okay, not less than or equal to. So if it's a greater than or less than and not an equal to situation, your border or your actual graph is going to be dashed. Okay, all right, now the second thing that you want to do, like I said, is go ahead and find the solutions to this quadratic equation. So just take this part, this x squared minus x minus 12, set it equal to 0 and solve. In this case, our solutions are x equals negative 3 and x equals 4. Those solutions, what we call roots, real number roots, are going to be the points where the parabola crosses the x-axis. Okay, so now we have a very accurate graph of the parabola, okay, of this quadratic equation on a graph, okay, although it's an inequality, we have its graph. And now let's talk about actually finding the solutions to this inequality. So what we're going to do is we're going to test a point on the inside or the outside of the parabola. So you can see here, this would be, I would consider this the inside of the parabola, and this part right here on the outside would be the outside of the parabola. So we want to test a point on either the inside or outside of the parabola. What I like to do is always test the easiest point, and that's the point 0, 0, because I just like working with zeros. It makes your life so much easier. So what I mean by testing the point is we're going to take that point 0, 0, and we're going to plug it in to our original quadratic inequality. So that's y is less than x squared minus x minus 12. So let's plug in x is for 0 and y is for 0. Okay, we're going to let those values stand. And when I do that, here's what's going to happen, right? So y is equal to 0, x is equal to 0, and I work out the math and I get this. I get 0 is less than negative 12. So you have to ask yourself, is that a true or false statement? Is 0 less than negative 12? No, it's not, okay? Negative 12 is less than 0, so that's a false statement. So that means that this point here, 0, 0, which happened to be inside the parabola, produced a false statement. So what's inside this area, this region here, is our false region. Okay, so when we're finding the solution to these quadratic inequalities, we always want to highlight or shade the true region. Okay, the true region is the opposite region. So if the inside was false, the outside automatically has to be true. So you're going to shade the outside of the parabola to indicate that's where the true points are or the solution. Okay, that's a lot to go over in a pretty much short amount of time. So once again, a lot of things going on, graphing quadratic equations, solving them, testing certain points. Hopefully, you did well on this quiz, and if you want to take more quizzes with me, jump on over to homeschoolmathquiz.com, especially if you're a homeschooler. You'll love the site, and have a great day.